Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Knitting podcast and this is episode 45. First off, welcome to any new subscribers. I've had a bit of a flurry of new faces around here, so welcome if you are new. It's so lovely to have you here, and welcome back if you are not. It's also very lovely to have you here. I have been doing a fair bit of knitting over the past week. I've no idea how I've actually managed to fit it all in, because I feel like this week has been so unbelievably busy, but I have somehow managed to end up with 5 finished objects and 1 whip to talk to you about this week. Briefly, I will mention the fact that I have not touched my husband's modified colour tip tee or my Colette pullover this week. So they will not be making an appearance this week, but hopefully I will be getting back to them fairly soon. It is an incredibly cold and frosty morning this morning, so I am very grateful for all of my knitwear. I am today wearing my ALDER sweater. Is that what it's called? Yeah, ALDER sweater by Rebecca CLOW of the Crea Bear, and I knit this up in BC Yarn Loch Lomond in the colours Pine and Sand, which are also 2 colours that I used in my West Sands pullover, which I showed last week, which has also been a real staple this week because they are just so warm and cosy. But I wear this all the time. This is kind of like a go-to outfit for me, especially when I need to just get out really quickly in the morning, and it's holding up relatively well. There's a little bit of pilling going on the sleeves, but very, very minimal, I would say, for the amount that I actually wear this. So I am very, very happy with this, and I really love the fit. I love that it actually fits quite well underneath my dungarees and it's not too bulky. So yes, very grateful to be able to wear this today to keep me warm. But yes, without further waffle, let's get into my finished objects for this week. So my first finished object is a hat, and unfortunately I had to knit this up because my daughter managed to lose her hat at school last week. So the hat that she lost was a Musselburgh that I knit up out of like some rainbow sparkle yarn. I think it featured on the podcast maybe back in January. I can't remember what number podcast it was, but I'll put a picture of it up here. So unfortunately that one got lost at school. My own fault, I didn't put her name in it. I probably should have, but it's fine. I'm sure it will turn up eventually. But yes, I had to knit her a new hat. So I was scouring Ravelry and I managed to find Olive's Cat Beanie, which is, I think it says that it's meant to be a DK weight or maybe a worsted weight, but the suggested yarns are 1 strand of Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino and one strand of Knitting for Olive mohair. Now my daughter cannot stand mohair. It really, really makes her itch. It's a really big issue for her to have it anywhere near her. So I completely omitted the mohair strand and I knit mine up out of 1 strand of, what was it? I've got it written down. 1 strand of Cascade 220 in the colour Tutu. This was just living in my stash. I'm not 100% sure it is the colour Tutu, but that was the closest match that I could find online, because I have had this in my stash for quite a while now and it didn't have a ball band on it. So this pattern comes in a variation of different sizes, aging from I think age 1 all the way up to adult sizes, and I knit the age 5 to 8. And I used the recommended 4.5 and 3.5mm needles, and it is just this super cute stockinette hat with little cat ears, and they're worked up by doing increases, and the pattern does have a single brim, single 2x2 rib brim, which you start with and then you knit the rib and then go into the stockinette. I decided to do mine ever so slightly differently. I did a provisional cast on and I just knit the stockinette portion of the hat to begin with, and then I went back and put my stitches back on the needle and knit the rib. And I'm really glad that I did that because I did try this on my daughter, and with just a single brim it was going to be very, very short on her head, and so if I ever did her like a ponytail or anything, she wouldn't really be getting any benefit of wearing this hat. It would just pop straight off because it just wasn't coming down far enough. So I decided to do a folded brim, and that has worked much better. She prefers a folded brim as well because she does feel the cold a little bit on her ears, and she also does forest school, so she is out in the cold, the wet, all kinds of weather doing forest school, and so having a little extra layer on her ears is always a great thing to have. So that did also mean that I could do a tubular cast off, which means that it's A, nice and stretchy, and B, looks nice. But overall, I'm very, very happy with how this turned out. I did get gauge, but I do find this to be a little bit small. So I think maybe next time, if I was to knit this again for her, I would probably knit the next size up. But that might be just because we prefer to have our hats a little bit looser. My daughter doesn't have a particularly big head, so I don't think it's really that it doesn't fit a 4-year-old. It's more just we prefer our hats to be a bit looser. All in all, I used only 62 grams of yarn, so I have a fair bit left over, which was about 124 meters, including the folded brim. And yeah, it's a fairly big gauge, 18 stitches and 24 rounds, so relatively quick. I apologise, my stomach is now grumbling for some obscure reason, but yeah, it was a really good, really easy knit, and I'm very glad that she is now going to have a hat to keep her warm between now and when I can actually knit her another Musselburgh, because she does miss that hat, and she really liked the fit of it, so hopefully over maybe the Christmas break I can get around to knitting her another one. And like I say, this took me next to no time at all to knit, because I cast this on November the 13th and I cast it off on November the 14th. I've written the wrong month. So all in all, this took me 2 days to knit, and cost wise the pattern was £5.29. The yarn was £7.19. That is current pricing that I found for one skein of Cascade 220. So that brings the total to £12.48. But yeah, I think these are really, really cute. I think they would be great gift knits if you've got any kids in your life who would like a little cat hat. I think it would also be really cute if you like embroidered a little face on the front. I think I might do that. But yeah, very, very cute little hat. Great quick knit to whip up for the emergency she needs a hat moment. So that was finished object number 1. So finished object number 2 is a festive one, and it is Gnorri the gnome. Now, I completely forgot to mention Gnorri in my last podcast. I was knitting her last week and it just completely fell out of my brain when I was writing my notes. And then I came to edit and I was sort of like, I'm sure I've missed one. But either way, here she is. She will show up as a finished object. So this is a pattern by SARA, and it's from her book, which I have put down here somewhere and now can't see. Here it is. It's from her book, The Gnomes of Grimblewood. And you get 8 gnome patterns in here, I think. Is it 8? I think it's 8. So yeah, you get 8 gnome patterns in here, and I chose to do Gnorri because I saw that Helen from Giddy Yarns was doing kits for Gnorri, so I decided to pick one of them up. I've been eyeing up these gnomes for ages now. I saw kits come out for them last year and I was sort of like, oh, that would be really cool, and then never really sort of delved into the world of actually knitting one. And this year I thought, right, that's it, I'm going to knit a gnome, and so I have. So I picked up a kit from Helen at Giddy Yarns, and so she has 2 different versions of the kits on her website at the moment. She has a 3 skein version, which is designed to be knit into Gnorri, and she also has a 4 skein version, which is designed to be used for the 2024 December mystery gnome that is gonna be coming out at the beginning of December, and that's more like an advent knit, so you get 21 updates for the pattern, and you purchase the pattern through Sarah Chira's website or her Ravelry, and you knit it like throughout the month of December. But Gnorri is available in the book already. So I picked up a 3 skein kit, and it was the blush kit, and I picked it up on the sparkle base. So you get this lovely beige, a light pink, and then a darker, more purpley pink. And so I then used those to knit up my own Gnorri. So you use a 2.25 and a 2.5mm needle, so that was great, could use up my sock needles. And I knit this entirely magic loop. And the one thing that I do really love about these is that the body and the hat are all kind of knit as essentially one piece, and then you stuff them, and that's your main bit done. And then you do have a couple of little bits to knit up and sew on. But because you have already done the hat and the body and you've got the main bulk of this, you can kind of sew them on as you go, so there's not a lot of sewing up to do at the end, and it becomes a little bit more modular. Gnorri was like my little practice run for the December mystery gnome, which I have decided that I will also be knitting up this year. And I've ordered another kit from Giddy Yarns because I just thought that they would be so cute together. And I really like the fact that I've used the sparkle because it just makes it just a little bit more festive. I think she is so sweet. I love the little pockets. And I love the fact that all of the gnomes in the book, you can knit them all in fingering weight or DK, and they're kind of quite interchangeable, so you can sort of mix and match bits of them. And I will definitely be making more of these. So Gnorri took me basically no time at all. I knit this up in 5 days. So I cast it on November the 11th and cast it off on November the 15th. And yeah, it was all relatively simple. I think that she would be a great beginner project if you did want to knit any of these gnomes. And I think the book is actually really great value for money because you get 8 patterns in there. But essentially you get them all for like the price of maybe 2 patterns on Ravelry. And you can kind of mix and match, you can pick and choose what you want to knit and everything like that. And I also think these might be really good gift knits. There's nothing particularly complicated in there. I mean, you do have to do a little bit of picking up stitches, but mostly it's just knitting small circumference, and it's all just knits and purls. There are a couple of more complicated patterns in the book, like there's ones with cables, ones with colour work, but this is a really great, like, quick beginner knit and really doesn't take very much time at all. I like that the pattern adds in a note to add some like weighted stuffing into the bottom. So I just used some dried lentils that I had lying around in the kitchen. But it means that she's got quite a good sort of weight to her, and she's not likely to just topple over like a stuffed toy would be. And so she sits up quite nicely. And yeah, I think she's super fun. And I can't wait to knit some more of these and use them as decorations. Right now we have like one long TV cabinet underneath the TV in the living room, and it doesn't have anything that really goes on it for like our Christmas decorations, and it looks quite bare. So I'm hoping to knit up a couple of these gnomes to decorate that and be able to add to it like year on year, and then they can all just live on there and decorate it. So cost wise for this little gnome, the pattern book cost £11.85, but obviously you get 8 patterns in there, not just Gnorri. The kit with the 3 mini skeins cost me £15. They are still currently available on Helen's website, which I will have linked down below. So the total, not including the stuffing because I just had that lying around, and to be honest, you could probably use anything as your soft stuffing, like yarn ends, polyfill, like anything really. I didn't include that. So the grand total for Gnorri is £26.85, and I think she is so cute. I cannot wait to knit some more and have them scattered around the house. So finished object number 3 is like my big finished object for this week, and I 100% did not expect to have it done this week. I thought that I was going to be knitting this for at least another week or so, but it's just flown off my needles, and it is my husband's Let It Snow sweater. So this is a pattern by RIMMEN for Phil Kalana, and it's a free pattern available on their website. And I knit this up out of Phil Kalana Pernille in the colour Thuja, which is the dark green, and Marzipan, which is the sort of beige. And so it's just a colourwork yoke sweater and then just all over stockinette. The pattern does have it, so the pattern does have like fleece stitches across the bottom of the body and on the sleeves to make it look like snow, but my husband decided he didn't want that, so I didn't do that. I just did just the plain green with the contrast bind offs. And he really likes this. He wore this to the office today and he said he got loads of compliments on it, although he did also get a couple of people say it's too early for Christmas, but we just won't. We'll just gloss over those. So I used the recommended needles, so that's a 4mm for your main fabric and a 3.5 for your ribbing. The pattern does say that obviously you might need to go up or down for your colourwork to make sure that it matches the rest of the body, but I didn't do that because my colourwork gauge it's just so loose. I thought it was just going to be loose on socks, but it seems to be loose just in general. So I didn't change my needle size, and I don't think it's really caused too much of an issue. I did think that it looked particularly loose last week before I blocked it, but blocking seems to have sorted it all out, and now it looks really nice and neat. And I'm very happy with it. I've been saying for years that I want to knit him a Christmas jumper and like have us all have a hand knitted Christmas jumper for every year, and I'm really glad that I've finally done it. And I think this pattern was the perfect choice because it's not only Christmassy, it's more just sort of standard wintry, so he's going to get a little bit more wear out of this, because I did also think, hang on, is it quite pointless to just knit him a jumper or knit us all a jumper that we're only going to wear for like 1 month of the year? Now my daughter's is ever so slightly different because she is 4 and she doesn't really care, so she'll wear it whenever. But obviously if I'm knitting one for me and my husband, then I want us to get a good amount of wear out of them without it being just something that I knit for us to wear 1 month of the year. And I think, like I say, this was a really good choice because I'm pretty sure that he could wear this in November or January and just have it as like a wintry sweater, because they just look like snowy trees. And so I'm really happy with my pattern choice. I did do a couple of modifications. So the pattern has you do just a single folded collar, and I did a double folded, and I added in the little pop of marzipan at the top as well. Apologies for my ends, I have not trimmed them yet, but this has been washed and blocked. And so I did say last week that I was worried about this sitting a little bit too high on his neck, and that has sorted itself out really nicely. I did want to get some B-roll, but I had a load of like technical difficulties yesterday filming this, and I didn't manage to get any pictures of him wearing it because I finished this midweek, and then I just haven't had a chance to get any good pictures of him or B-roll of him wearing it where it's not pitch black outside, because we are now at the point where it is dark by the time he gets home from work. So I will try and get some B-roll and some pictures of him in this over the weekend, and then I'll put them in next week's podcast so that you can kind of get some reference of what it looks like on the body. But yeah, the collar has stretched out really nicely, so it sits a little bit lower down now, and that obviously brought all of the jumper down as well, so we got the perfect length. I knit the sleeves and the body to the lengths recommended in the pattern. I obviously got my husband to try them on as well, and he was happy with them. And then I modified the ribbing ever so slightly because the pattern has you put this pearl row at the top of the collar, at the collar. But then it doesn't mention having one on the ends of the sleeves or the body, so I just added those in so that it would just look a little bit more intentional throughout the whole of the jumper. So I've just added in the pearl row on the sleeves, and then I've done I think I did 4.5 centimeters of 1x1 rib in the green, and then I did a knit round in the marzipan, and then 1 round of 1x1 rib, and then I did the setup rows and the tubular bind off in the marzipan as well to give that little pop of colour, which has kind of just become something that I do on most jumpers now. And then I did the same on the bottom of the body so that it all matches up, and I think it's elevated it just that little bit and kind of made it look a little bit more sort of I can't think of the word, and just made it look a little bit more sort of put together. But overall, I am so happy with this. I did manage to get gauge, and the reason I think this flew was because I thought that it was going to take a lot longer to knit the body, but I actually only ended up using, I think it was 5 and a bit balls of the green, and I bought 7 or 6. No, I bought 7. And so yeah, I didn't use anywhere near as much yarn as I thought I would. So I think the estimations are maybe slightly off, because obviously I didn't do the colour work across the body. So yeah, that is maybe something to kind of take into account when you are purchasing yarn. I didn't look at any of the Ravelry projects and how much yarn they used, so that might have been a better option, but it's fine. I'm sure I will find a use for the extra yarn. But all in all, this weighs 331 grams, and 43 grams of that is the contrast colour, so I only actually used 288 grams of the main colour. And like I say, I only just tapped into that sixth ball, so it was quite economical on yarn, and it's really nice and light. I definitely think I made the right decision to not use the second strand when knitting this, because I think that would have made it really heavy and really dense, and he did say that this was quite a nice weight to be able to wear in the office when they have the heating on and everything, without needing to like whip it off because it's too hot. So that is a nice positive. But yeah, I really like this. I'm so glad that I chose this pattern, and I really like the fact that this obviously matches my daughter's version, which I did bring in today. So this is my daughter's. I can't remember what this one is called. I think it's called the Jingle Bells. It's also a free pattern on the Phil Kalana website, and I knit this one up last year out of Sanna's Garn Merino. So this is her version, and then obviously this is my husband's version as well. Let's see if I can hold these up together. So yeah, I really like that they can match now. It's just so cute. Love it. I'm now that person that makes us all matching Christmas jumpers. And I don't care. I don't care how cringe it is. I love it. But anyway, I cast this on November the 5th, and I cast it off on November the 18th. So this took me a grand total of 14 days to knit. I don't understand how I managed to knit this so quickly. It just flew off my needles. I think because of the stockinette, it was just super duper fast, and I never really notice how much of it I'm knitting, especially if I put something on the telly in the evenings. I just like fly through it. But it also meant that this was a really easy knit to have whilst I was editing, so that also lent a little bit more time to being able to finish this. But yeah, very happy with this. And so that also brings me to the costings. So the pattern was of course free. The yarn, I ended up using 7 balls of yarn, so that's at £4.20 a ball. That makes it £29.40 for the yarn. So that brings the grand total for this jumper to £29.40. So also very reasonable, because I don't think I would be able to get him a Christmas jumper in the shops for less than £30. So yes, very happy with this, and now I can hand it back to him to wear, because he has been desperate to have it back. So that was finished object number 3. Finished object number 4 is a gift knit that I am making for one of my husband's colleagues. She is going off to go and have a baby. She's having a little girl in January, and he asked me if I could knit her up something for him to give her as a maternity gift. And so I decided to knit up a baby bear bonnet. Now this is also a pattern by PERNILLE LARSEN, like the Olive's Cat Beanie that I knit up for my daughter. And the suggested yarns for this were Knitting for Olive Merino, or 1 strand of fingering weight from Knitting for Olive, and 1 strand of mohair. Now I did not feel comfortable gifting a baby bonnet with mohair in, especially to a non-knitter. I wanted to make sure that we could kind of avoid any possible washing mishaps, and also I never felt comfortable putting mohair on my daughter because of the amount it sheds, and so I just don't really feel comfortable gifting it. I know lots of people do put mohair on babies, and that's fine, it's personal preference, but I don't know, to me it just always made me worry, so I never did that for my daughter, and so I don't really feel comfortable like gifting it to other people's kids as well. So I decided to use some yarn from my stash, and I used the Dandelion and Dogwood sock in the colour Lusterwear, and I got this from their Christmas collection last year, and it just looks like this. So it's a beautiful like cream base with like bits of pink, purple, blue, and then some sort of darker speckles as well. And the Dogwood sock is an 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon base, so I thought even if this does get thrown in the washing machine, it's more likely to survive than it would do if I used a non-superwash and a mohair. So I used the recommended needles, which was a 3.5mm needle, and I knit this completely to pattern in the 3-month size. I was going to knit the smallest size in the pattern, but then I thought, you never know how big a baby's head is going to be, and I always think if you're gifting, then it's better to err on the side of being too big for kids than being too small, because at least that means they might get somewhere out of it in the future. And so yeah, I went for the 3-month size, and this looks enormous now, but you know, it will fit them at some point. So I, like I say, knit this entirely to pattern. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing whilst I was knitting this. I was purely just following the instructions and trusting the process of the pattern. I've never knit a bonnet before, and I was sort of just like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm just hoping it all comes together in the end. Realistically, I probably should have read the pattern first, kind of got a basic understanding of the construction, and then knit it, but it's fine. It worked out in the end. So you knit this flat, and you start with the ribbing at the front, and then you work back and forth, and you shape the ears as you go using some increases, and then you break your yarn, and then you do short rows to shape this section at the back. And so it was only when I was doing these short rows at the back that I finally understood how this was going to come together, because then it started to, like the heel of a sock, it started to kind of look a little bit more like it was going to go on a head. But when I was knitting this, I was like, this is enormous. How on earth is this going to fit on a baby's head? I must have done something wrong here. But yeah, it did finally come together in the end, and I understood what I was doing. I think that was purely a me thing. I was just like, I don't know what this, I don't get it. I've never knit a bonnet before. I don't understand the construction of it. But now it makes sense. So yeah, you knit kind of like around the head, do the short rows and everything, and then you knit the I-cord, and then you pick up stitches and do an I-cord bind off, and then knit more I-cord around the side to make these ties. I made my ties a little bit bigger because I didn't want to make them too short. I always feel like that must be a bit of a nightmare, trying to tie up a bonnet around a baby's head when it's slightly too short, because you don't want to do it too tight. So I made them a little bit longer just to give a little bit more room to like tie a nice bow or something if they want to. But yeah, it was like the construction of the ears and everything were relatively similar to the baby, no, not the baby, this is the baby one, were relatively similar to the Olive's Cat Beanie. So they kind of made sense, but yeah, it was just the fact that you were knitting it flat and then shaping something to go round a head. I was sort of like, surely this should be knit in the round, but you know, it makes sense now. And to be honest, I would knit this again. I think it is a great little gift knit. I think the fact that it's a bonnet and not a hat gives it a little bit more longevity, because there is just that little bit of extra room in there, because it's not really sort of like tight to the head. But I think it's super cute. I'm really glad that I went for the hand-dyed yarn, because I think that this is a much more neutral colour. My other option when I was stash diving was like a really bright pink, and although I know that she is having a girl, I don't know what her colour preferences are, so I thought this neutral was probably a little bit more of a safe choice for a gift knit. But yeah, I think this is a really sweet little gift. I would have loved to have received one of these when I had my daughter, so hopefully she likes it as well. And I cast this on November the 18th and cast it off on November the 19th. So this took me a grand total of 2 days to knit. And the costings for this pattern, I paid £5.29 for the pattern, and then one skein of the dogwood sock is £20. So the grand total for this was £25.29. However, that may seem like quite a lot just for a bonnet for a gift, but I also used this yarn to knit up my last finished object, which is finished object number 5 of this week. It's been a busy week. And so to go with the bonnet, I knit up a pair of baby house shoes. This is patterned by Ines on Ravelry. I'm not sure if her website is under a different name. I will have it linked down below. But yeah, I just knit up a super cute pair of booties, and I held the yarn double to knit these because the suggested yarn was an Aran weight on 4mm. Was it 4? Yeah, 4mm needles. And I knit this pattern up before for my friend's baby when they had her a couple of years ago, and they came out massive in Aran weight. So I decided that I would just go down a needle size and use a DK, and they're sort of somewhat more newborn sized now. So I used a 3.75mm needle. And yeah, I love knitting up these little booties as gifts. It's a free pattern available on their website, so it's really affordable, and they use like barely any yarn as well. So obviously I knit up these booties and this bonnet, and I still have a fair bit of this yarn left over. I haven't weighed this yet, but I'd say that there's easily 50 grams or more left over. So yeah, process of knitting these is relatively simple. You just knit the like garter stitch sole of the bootie, and then you pick up stitches around the edge and then knit the stockinette portion with the decreases for the foot, and then you just knit the ribbing. The pattern does suggest a 2x2 rib, but I decided to do a 1x1 just to match the bonnet, so they were a little bit more cohesive as a gift. And I think it still meant that the ribbing is nice and stretchy, and it also meant that I could do a really stretchy tubular bind off, because you never want anything that's going to be too tight around a baby's leg. So it gives that a little bit of extra room. And also if they've got a baby grow that's got feet, then it's still gonna allow enough room for like the fabric of the baby grow to go inside the bootie, which I thought was quite important, because if she's having a baby in January, then she's probably going to be wanting to layer them up when they go outside. But yeah, other than that, I knit these completely to pattern, and they are so quick to knit up. So I cast these on November the 19th, and obviously cast them off on November the 19th as well. So they took like one afternoon to knit. They were very, very quick. And I think if you were just using one strand of DK and you knit them 2 at a time, you could have them done even quicker, and just use the inside and outside of the ball. But because I was doing these double stranded from one ball of fingering, I had to knit them 1 at a time. But still very, very quick, and I think really effective. They are so sweet. And yeah, so yeah, I have these to gift to my husband's colleague, and hopefully she likes them. And yeah, just a nice sweet little baby gift. And costings for the booties. So the pattern is free. Obviously one skein of the yarn would have been £20, but because I used one skein to knit both of these, I would say that they both fall into the £25 that I had for the bonnet for these. So yeah, these are basically free really, aren't they? So that brings me to my one and only whip for this week, which is my version of the festive jumper that I have obviously knit for my daughter and my husband already. And so this is the Santa Baby Sweater by RIMMEN for Phil Kalana. It's another free pattern available on their website, and I am using the opposite colours to my husband. So sorry, I'm using the same colours as my husband's, but in the opposite way round. So I'm using the Marzipan as the main colour and Thuja as my contrast colour. And I've got quite far on this. It's another round yoke, colourwork yoke with stockinette, body and sleeves. And I so far have, where is the, there. So I have so far knit one of the, what is this end? Go over there. One of the trees in the colourwork yoke. So there are 2 rows of trees for the women's version like there is in the men's. And so yes, I have done the first one, but the women's version also has these little sort of like stars around them, so it is slightly different, but it's the same kind of idea as the men's version. So I like the fact that although all of these charts are essentially the same, they are Christmas trees, they're all ever so slightly different, so it kind of doesn't look like I've just knit the same jumper for all 3 of us. But I do like the fact that these are free patterns, so I haven't had to buy 3 separate patterns. So yeah, like I say, I'm knitting size small, and I did come into one problem whilst I was knitting this. So I did the cast on and then I did the short rows, but the short rows have you work so they have you work like rows 1 and 2, and then you do 3 and 4, and then you repeat 3 and 4 a certain amount of times. But the last time for size small, if you repeat those short rows to the pattern, you end up going, so usually you would obviously go round and then end up here, and then go around this way and end up here, and then you go back around and you would end up like a little bit further along, but you would never actually cross them at the front. If you were to knit these according to the pattern for size small, then they would end up crossing over at the front, and that just didn't sit right for me. So I altered this, and so for the first, for the last repeat of the short rows, instead of going across 8 stitches and then turning and going back, I only went across 5, so that then there would be 2 stitches in the middle that were not included in the short rows, and it would mean that it would kind of come down and shape the back neck but never cross at the front. I'm sure it probably would have been fine if I had crossed them over at the front, but it just didn't sit right with me, so I didn't do that. I just modified it so that they would almost meet in the middle. But that's really the only problem that I found with this pattern. Other than that, it's been fairly smooth sailing. The chart is really easy to follow. It's like sort of like a wedge chart, so at which you then like repeat all the way around the yoke. So I find it quite easy to just sort of cut it into sections and like just count how many stitches I need to do of each, and then just repeat that around. But I'm sure if you were knitting this and you found that a little bit tricky, or if it's like your first colourwork project, then you could just put markers in after every however many stitches to kind of like segment it into each bit of the chart, so you can kind of find it a little bit easier to work that way around. But yeah, I hopefully will be getting through the colourwork of this fairly quickly, and then hopefully be able to get through the stockinette as quickly as I got through it with my husband's, and then we will all be able to wear these together throughout the month of December, which I think is going to be really lovely. I do intend to do the contrast at the top of the collar and in the ends of the sleeves and the body, like I did with my husband's as well. And yeah, I'm just very, very happy with how this is turning out. I did think the other day actually it would have been nice to put a little bit of sparkle in there, but I think by not doing that I've made this a little bit more wearable throughout the whole of the winter and not just for the festive period. But yeah, just slowly working away on the colourwork of this, and I'm really enjoying it. I feel like I'm really in like my colourwork era at the moment. I just want to knit colourwork all the time. But I feel like I went through this with cables as well earlier in the year, and now I'm just like in my colourwork moment, and then I'm sure it will pass eventually and I'll move on to something else. But yeah, so I cast this on November the 19th, so this has currently been on my needles for 2 days. So yeah, we'll just see how much I can get done over the next week. Those jumpers have sort of become my priority because obviously I want us to be able to get as much wear out of them as possible before the end of the festive period. So I'm not sure how much I will get done on my other whips this week, but yeah. So that is everything I have knitting wise for this week. Hope you all have a wonderful week and you get lots of crafting done. Please do let me know what you are working on. I love to hear about it. And I will catch up with you all next week with some more knitting. Happy making!